What's it doing?
Going that way.
Okay. How many other people see it moving? At least every now and then. Is it moving every now and then? Mm-hmm. This thing, is it going like that? Mm-hmm. No? Keep looking. Look very deeply into my eyes. I mean, into that. It isn't moving. What you're seeing with the way of movement in this picture is what your brain is doing with the light coming off the TV. Isn't that amazing?
What if you don't see it move?
That you need to be treated for. No, it doesn't. It doesn't actually work quite as good. It's just going around like crazy on the computer screen here. I'm just kidding. But yes, if you actually find this on the computer somewhere on the internet, you would see that it's just moving almost constantly as your brain is trying to process light. And light is what we're talking about today, the light of the body. How many people were taught that the brain runs everything? The nervous system. Essentially, right? It's the computer of your body, we think, right? Well, we know that a nerve impulse is very easy to measure how fast a nerve impulse travels. And it turns out the fastest a nerve impulse can go is 400 miles an hour, which sounds pretty fast, right? But compared to our laptop computers, your cell phone, your smartphones, it's like a snail's pace. Okay? Way too slow to be what's really enabling your body to adapt instantly to everything that's going on around you. And you are adapting to the fact that my voice is a few feet to this side now compared to my voice coming to you from this side. Your body had to adapt to that, believe it or not. It does it so beautifully. The idea that we have all the smells of food that you are eating at this lunch lecture, you're having to adapt to that because you know what? The person who cannot adapt starts having a headache to these smells. That's a loss of adaptation. And when we start realizing, we can break that down into big chunks and say, well, that's just your autonomic nervous system. Well, that's a big thing, right? We got to fix your autonomic nervous system. Or maybe we have to fix your adrenal glands, which again is a big clunky thing, right? That's how we think of the body, though, as in pieces and parts, don't we? And we can even get bigger, smaller clumpy pieces, like your eosinophils and your histamine. These are still big clunky pieces, even though they're microscopic in the body. So what we're talking about is how that the body runs itself really through software, essentially, through what are called biophotonic emissions of light. So when I trained in Germany, it was the first time way back in 1999, maybe I trained in Germany, and they introduced me to the concept of color and light used by the body as a nutrient. Other than here, have you ever heard that light is a nutrient? Other than kind of the whole vitamin D thing, that's just one aspect. Okay? Well, it turns out that light enters the body through your skin. Now, everybody knows basically you have photoreceptors, meaning these are those cells in the body that allow light in, photoreceptors in your eye, right? That's the retina. Did you know your body is coated with them all over? Your skin is completely coated with photoreceptors. Why? Why would you? It's not like I can stick out my hand and there's words on the screen, I can see it. No, obviously I can't see through my skin. But there's still photoreceptors in my skin. So all this light is actually going in, but guess what? Every square centimeter. Now, we're not really, in America, used to centimeter metric, but again, it's about a quarter inch almost, right? Every square centimeter of skin is emitting 1,000 to 2,000 photons per second. Now, photon is like what we call the energy packets of light, right? Unit of light is a photon. When it comes from the body, we call that a biophoton. Okay, biophotons. You're emitting light, huge amounts of light from your body. Okay, they say in the last 3 hours of life, you're about to transition out of here, you're emitting a huge amount of light, a lot more than you would normally see in a person. And at the instant of death, there's a flash of light. Again, you'd only see it generally with sensitive photometers, these devices to detect light. And once you've gone and you're dead, there's no more light. Now, all the chemistry of you is still there. It's just changed how it runs, right? So it seems like even as you start to almost immediately decompose, that you'd still be releasing light to some degree, doesn't it? But no, they say that light is gone. So again, when we're talking about biophotons and how that light is what's running the body, well, obviously we're not saying that everything you learned about the eyes and how we take in light and it hits the retina, all that's still true. And the retina has rods and cones. These are special photoreceptors that convert that light into an electrochemical impulse that we call vision. Okay, all that's still true, but it's not the complete story. And that's what I'm going to tell you today. Because light enters the eye and the body and gains access to the entire body through what's called your Mueller cells, okay? Now, before I go too far, I can tell almost every time I teach this, somebody goes, well, what about somebody who's colorblind? Does it still work on them? Yes, because it's not your perception of a color. It is a wavelength. Matter of fact, if you think about it, there's no pigments in red light, right? There's no pigments in it. It's actually a wavelength, and your brain does something to it that you perceive red. So if you can't do that, that wavelength is still working, isn't it? Now I have this picture up here. This guy's not having too good a day. Okay, this is obviously a bullfighter. Underneath the cape is the bull. And that's no bull. Actually, it is a bull. Sorry, the humor just comes naturally. Okay. Now, have you ever seen a bullfighter go out and do the bullfight with something other than a red cape? This thing here. No, he always takes the red, doesn't he? And what most people miss is that the other side is always yellow. Why would you think that would be? Now consider this too. A bull does not have the photoreceptors in his eyes, the cones, to actually see red. They can't see they can't see red at all. They don't perceive it. That's why hunters, when they go deer hunting and stuff, they wear the hunter orange, if you've ever seen that. A deer can't see that color. So you might as well be wearing some real flamboyant outfit to go hunting, of course. No, not really. Okay, but red wavelengths still affect the bull in a very predictable way. And if the bull gets too aggressive, guess what? The bullfighter can show him the yellow side, and that stimulates digestion in the bull. Now, if you've ever been around a pasture full of cows and bulls, what are they doing? Well, most of the time, eating. They're either eating or mating or eating. That's all they ever do, right? So the yellow stimulates that digestive system, and the bull goes, I don't want to fight anymore. I'm hungry. I don't know why. So the bullfighter can actually manipulate the bull with color. Even though the bull cannot see red, it still enters the eye as a wavelength of light when the bull looks at it. And red, guess what it does? It stimulates the adrenal glands. And the adrenal glands are your stress organs, so the bull gets all stressed out, gets angry. It's like putting children in a red room. They've done this for experiments. They go bonkers. Okay? Type A individuals. We all met those kind. They're just like hyperactive, and they got to be really on the go constantly. What color car do they drive generally? Red. They like red everything because it stimulates them. They like to be revved up. They talk fast. They do everything fast, right? So this is a picture of the human eye. And again, we're looking at one little tiny segment in the back of your eyeball. This is called the macula. And in the macula, it's having to capture all the incoming light into that one little segment right there. Isn't that amazing? You got all of this eye, and yeah, you have some stuff in there too, but mainly where you are trying to capture all the light is on the back of the eye in that one little spot. This is also what your doctor's looking for a lot of the time when he's doing an eye exam. He's looking for that macula. How good does it look? And your eye, it turns out, is actually jiggling all the time, trying to capture all the incoming light to hit that spot at the back of your eye, called the macula. And this is a blow-up of it. And again, you see we have reds and greens and blue cones back here, and then we have some black, essentially rods and stuff around the other aspects of the eye. Now, all this is kind of going back to your high school biology class. Anybody have that in biology? Kind of looking at the eye. Rods and cones. Rods detect low light, low-level light, such as dusk and dawn. Okay? Cones detect colored wavelengths of light. So 65% of the cones in your eyes are red ones. All they do is capture the red light. 30% are green, and 5% are blue, RGB. That's how we see every color that we can see. There's a smattering, they say, of others. But generally, most of the rods in your eyes, the cones in your eyes, are red ones. So we're going to talk about now, again, how does the body regulate itself and adapt instantly and correctly when the nervous system isn't doing it? If the nervous system isn't really what's doing it all, then what is the nervous system there for? Obviously it has to do something with movement, right? Because you cut the nerve, you can't use the arm, right? So yes, it does movement and it's sensory, but beyond that, it's not what's running everything. Not what's running everything. So the heart, as this picture shows, is emitting light. And it's interesting because the ancient texts from thousands of years back talk about the light of the body. The Bible even talks about the light of the body and how that if you would fast with the right heart and mind, that the light of your body would burst forth like the morning sun and health would follow speedily, it says. Pretty amazing, isn't it? We used to think that was a figure of speech, but they actually understood. And interestingly, isn't it, that when they paint the saint, what do they put around him? Maybe you see it around me. Just kidding. What is it they see? That halo, right? Maybe I should put up my lightning rod instead. Don't strike me, Lord, right? But actually, light is being emitted. And when you're in a love condition, when you walk in perfect love, you emit even more light because the DNA even respond to that frequency of love. So when we're thinking good, healthy thoughts, you can go to a lot of clinics, and that's one of the big things I do is help you repattern how you think. And they can get a lot of people dramatically better just shifting how we think. Because as a man thinks in his heart, so does he manifest, right? Throughout all the DNA. And this is what science has shown. Now, this is an artist's rendition, but it is pretty accurate, that the DNA expressed differently when we're in things that are positive versus things that are negative. But this light also doesn't have to do just with what you think. It is the software that runs your body. So just like your computer, it can have a glitch. Things that you inherited, problems you've inherited. Why is it that your whole family basically sometimes have a pattern that you see in everybody in that family? That's the software. And this is what we're looking at here, is this software of the body, that light of the body. And it turns out that light is the glue that even holds the electrons in their orbit around the nucleus of an atom. Now, there's a company in Japan that on their website, they used to have it. It was called Hamamatsu Photonics out of Japan. And Hamamatsu Photonics was talking about, they were working on being able to transmute matter. Now, this is like Hitler trying to turn lead into gold and stuff, because, the only difference from one thing to the next element in the periodic table is one more electron. And if you understood those electrons are controlled via light, then you can manipulate that matter just using light and change it into something else. Now, You might look at that and kind of go, well, that goes against every chemical textbook out there. You're right. I absolutely will tell you, every textbook that you open up, from high school textbooks to college textbooks to PhD textbooks generally, unless they've been written in the last, say, 10 years, they will all say that calcium is calcium, hydrogen is hydrogen, everything on the periodic table is immutable, meaning you cannot change it from calcium and break it down into something smaller. Or you can't turn calcium into something, but guess what? With this new knowledge, they're realizing biological systems like the human body can do this. Because biological systems can transmute matter through all these cool systems. So a lot of the time when a patient comes into the Hansa Center, they'll say, but Dr. Jernigan, I'm always low in magnesium, but I've been taking mega magnesium for 3 years. How can I still be low? I've been taking it forever. Well, it's not obviously a deficiency of magnesium. It may not even be the wrong type of magnesium. There's something in the software that's glitched, and when we fix that, guess what? Their magnesium goes back to normal even though they're not taking it anymore. It's just beautiful how this works. But if the doctor doesn't ever keep up with the science like this, they would never in a million years take you off of magnesium when you're so low, or iron, or any of these other elements that you could test in the human body. Now, that's for adding things to the body, like magnesium, right? What happens when you have mercury in the body? Everybody heard of mercury, right? Get it from your tuna, big fish. You get it from your dental amalgams. You get it in vaccinations. You get it environmentally in the water you drink, the pool you swim in. It's out there everywhere. But what if you could transmute mercury into something non-toxic? How about that? It ceases to be a toxin. You don't have to drag it through your kidneys anymore. Isn't that a worthy goal? Wouldn't that be nice? No more toxicity, no more having to dislodge mercury from the brain, drag it through all the tissues, circulate it all around the body where it sometimes gets stuck here and there and yonder. Then drag it what you can out through the kidneys. I actually was called in on a case in Vermont, and the man paid for me to go to Vermont. And his chef from Europe was making him fresh-made yogurt, like a goat yogurt or something in the kitchen. Accidentally broke the big thermometer. It was a kitchen mercury thermometer. Broke it in the process, and all that mercury spilled into the yogurt, but she fed it to him anyway. Well, that didn't really mess him up horribly as you would think. It's kind of interesting. It wasn't until the doctor he went to, who was a natural doc, said, we got to chelate all that out of you. So he mobilized all that, which dragged it through his kidneys and shut the kidneys down. So every day now, even though the guy is quite wealthy, he owns his own dialysis machine and sits on it for, I think, 6 hours a day, every day, because the guy dragged the mercury through his kidneys. So better would be transmute that mercury into something non-toxic maybe, right? This is where science is really heading. So let me ask all of you, has anybody seen this other than my staff? It's pretty, isn't it? This is actually DNA. Does that look anything like DNA you've been taught? Nah, that looks like a twisted ladder, doesn't it? DNA that we normally see, that double helix, right? This is actually DNA. If you cut it straight in half, across, that's the cross section of it. And what we're finding, again, is all the bonds, all the molecular bonds in chemistry, where you combine atoms together, you create molecules. Put molecules together, you get tissue, right? Okay? All of this is held together through energetic bonds of, guess what? Light. Now, I used to tutor chemistry in college. And I wouldn't say I'm like this great chemist, so don't get me wrong, but I knew enough to tutor. Nobody ever told me that when we're talking about the bonds in a molecule that you're really talking about light. How important is light if it holds everything together? It's very important. And if that's the software that runs even your immune system, that regulates microbes, the growth of microbes, the toxins, and everything you think is just from light energy and electromagnetic frequencies associated with that, you think as a doctor we'd want to specialize in that too, not just the big bulky stuff like your physical body, right? And I'm not saying we just throw out magnesium and we throw out all these other clunky things and say those aren't valuable. It's just not the full story anymore, is it? So, energy. Let's move on to this. Energy production in the body. If you weigh 100 pounds, okay, if you weighed 100 pounds, some of you ladies, maybe not even 100, you're burning 40 pounds a day in ATP, adenosine triphosphate. This is your energy packets that are produced in the mitochondria. That's just a small little organelle, we call them, inside of cells that produce the energy ATP. And guess what? So, okay, here I am, 250 pounds. Now that's 100 and something pounds of ATP I'm going through a day. Isn't that crazy? But thankfully, we recycle it generally. We recycle the ATP after it's been used. And to make energy, okay, so I want you to understand this. We have an adenosine triphosphate, this is ATP, and there's 3 phosphate groups on that molecule. Okay, to make energy, the energy to run everything, that's what we're talking about. We take off one of those phosphates, it just breaks it off, the body does, and what's released is, guess what? Light and heat. 1 photon and heat is released to run the body. How cool is that? Especially when we all bought into this idea that better health through chemistry. Well, why have a headache if you could just take Tylenol, right? Why have cramps if you could just take potassium? Okay, light of the body, if we fix that, guess what? All that does correct itself if we do it correctly. If we can get to the real core of the problems, it does it correctly. Now, obviously, if you have a big 30-foot long tapeworm, you're going to have to do something other than light, okay? So keep in mind, I'm not throwing out everything else in medicine. I'm just saying you want to get down to the core sometimes where it's just a software glitch in your body. So that's really how it happens. You have 3 phosphates, you break off one, light and heat is released. Okay? Huge amount of energy. So that runs everything. But is this just an on or off light? Like a light switch. Is it on and off? In the body, sometimes it's on, sometimes it's off? No, absolutely not. This is the software of your body. If the brain and nerves aren't running it, and you're not just some chemical body that just, the chemical, you eat stuff and it just kind of bumps around until it bangs around and gets to where it needs to go. No. There is a software that's moving all of this to wherever it needs to go. We even know now that hormones, okay? Hormones, we were taught there's a receptor site on a tissue, and here comes the hormone after it's been secreted by a gland, and it's like the orbital lander, NASA, and we have touchdown. That's what we were taught, was that's how hormones work, but it turns out, guess what? It is the light emissions of adrenaline, let's say, that cause an instantaneous shift all over your body. You didn't get adrenaline to go all the way down to your feet instantly so you could run away from the lion that's trying to eat you, right? It didn't spontaneously get to your feet. It just had to be created with a thought first. I'm scared. Ah! The thought came first, didn't it? Thought precedes very much the software, and it helps drive what happens. And then the adrenaline is secreted from the adrenal glands, and then you have instantaneous shifting all over your body to adapt to the challenge of that lion in your environment. And it's the same if you smell something. That's why sometimes these clinics that just deal with the thinking aspect of health can help somebody with allergies sometimes. Because it's like the thought, I smell something, I'm going to have a headache. Because I always do with that smell. The thought causes the program to start running, almost like it was a jukebox. It says, I push A1. Hopefully y'all still remember what jukeboxes are. And the record plops out and plays, I'm going to have an allergic reaction. Isn't that amazing? But it's working. The software itself is light. So, wavelengths of light, again, have no pigment. So it's just a wavelength. Okay, it's not a particle that has red and it's zapping your eye. It's just a perception that it's red by your brain. And that red light, specifically, when we talk about it being a nutrient, stimulates different parts of your body. So red light specifically stimulates your legs. How many people have weakness in their legs? A lot that come here. Red light, if it can't reach your legs, guess what? You're not going to have the stimulation to maintain good endurance and strength. But red also stimulates the spinal column, the colon, the bladder. You know, what is it? I think they say 70% of women over 40 lose a little bit of urine when they cough or sneeze or lift something heavy. How about if it was just a light metabolism problem and you're not getting the right energy to flow through the tissues of the body when you're looking at red? And what happens when red light cannot stimulate all these different tissues, the whole system of the body crashes. It's crazy to watch. And we can demonstrate that in the treatment room where it's just like, you're all strong and you're going great, and we put red light in your eyes, and all the organs we can test for start malfunctioning, and all the muscles in your body start going weak. All of them. I don't care if it's your little pinky muscle, it's not going to work very good. How about the heart? It's not going to work very good. Again, the heart is a generator of the body. So what about green? Remember 65% of the cones in your eyes were red ones, right? Pretty important. So much so that they are the massive majority in there. And it supports some pretty key things: the legs, the colon, the bladder, the kidneys, the adrenal glands, and the spinal column, the base of the spine as well. So green stimulates the heart, the arms, the hands, and the circulatory system, and the thymus. Pretty important. I kind of find it interesting that the heart, which now is understood to be a sensory organ and an endocrine gland, it's not an organ anymore in medicine. They've reclassified it because it secretes hormones, which just makes sense because the heart, if it's running everything, needs to be able to send chemical messengers to the organs to tell them to increase or decrease doing something. That's all a hormone does. It's a chemical messenger. So yeah, it would make sense that it would have to have something that tells it there's a need so that it can send out a hormone to go fulfill that need, right? So it's interesting to me that the dominant color on the planet is also what? Green. Green grass, green leaves. How do we feel inside of a tropical environment? Do we feel compressed and all like anxious? Not generally. You know, you get around waterfalls and tropical plants, we all feel wide open, and that's what green does to you. It really opens you up because it's working on the heart. Blue, it turns out, works on the lungs and the throat and the mouth region, the thyroid, parathyroid. So again, if you don't get blue to stimulate these tissues, well, don't be surprised when your thyroid won't ever start working, even though you've been going to doctors forever, getting natural therapies, bioidentical hormones. Would you rather take a bioidentical hormone, or would you rather get your thyroid to work correctly? Oops, plug in batteries. I'd rather see if we can get the thyroid to function correctly. And like I say, we can put blue light in your eyes, and sometimes we can find problems that were not detectable in any other way to see what's going wrong with your thyroid. So this is what we do in what's called neurophotonic therapy. If the light can't reach its target tissues on all these different wavelengths, then those are starving for energy. Did you know that in a cancer patient, everyone's been around people with cancer, they lose weight like crazy, don't they? Okay? It's called cachexia. The weight loss is just, all the weight's falling off of them. And guess what cancer does? It wastes away huge amounts of light. If you hold up a sensitive photometer over a tumor, you'd see that you're basically leaking light into the environment around you. Because what is tissue? If you burn it, it gives up that which it truly is. Human tissue, live tissue, is made out of light and heat. See a pattern? Light and heat. So like I say, when we're very, very sick and we're losing weight like crazy, sometimes you need to actually treat the light metabolism of the body so that you're not losing huge amounts of light. You got to fix that mechanism. You want to be able to also get light therapy so that your body can take in light and produce that light and fix the mitochondria so that you have enough of that so you have the energy. Did you know mitochondria, let me back up a little bit on that. Mitochondria is what makes a bodybuilder's arms get really huge and their body get huge. But those bodybuilders did not gain any more muscle fibers than they had when they were my size. Okay? All they did was plump up each muscle fiber with more mitochondria. So the heart, because it's always working in everybody, it's always pumping, isn't it? Doesn't ever take a break. There's about 2,000 to 4,000 mitochondria per muscle fiber in your heart. Okay? Now when you're sick, guess what happens? You're laying around in bed, your body goes, wow, if you're not going to ask me for more energy than this, I don't need all this mitochondria. So it starts shutting down those energy factories, and so the muscle gets smaller and weaker because your body wasn't getting a demand for it. And that's how bodybuilders get it. They just keep putting a demand by pumping weights, right? They kind of go, and your body goes, man, if you're going to keep asking me for this much energy all the time, I'm going to have to do what? Make more energy factories. And that energy is made out of ATP. I mean, the energy packets, if you will, it's made from ATP. That ATP does what? It produces light and heat. So you see how this all kind of comes back together again. So using neurophotonic therapy, which is an innovation that we made right here at the Hansa Center, we're able to challenge these photonic aspects of your body, see what malfunctions, see what the body actually needs to move light correctly through your body, correct that, and guess what? Almost 100%. I was going to ask the docs before I started this, and I forgot to, but we're almost 100% at getting seizures to go away using neurophotonic therapy. It's pretty amazing. Autistic kids we've seen that actually couldn't speak, and within a few neurophotonic therapy sessions, they were able to speak. Like the one story I'm thinking about is a little boy that, I guess he was about, 5 or 6, and the speech therapist knocked on the door, and when he was ran to the door with his mom, and mom opened the door, and the kid goes, Pam! Now, prior to this, everything was, what was it? Mom. Everything was mom. The bottle was mom. The dog was mom. Dad was mom. The speech therapist was mom. Every word that came out was mom. And so he started speaking for the very first time after just a few of the neurophotonic therapy. I mean, it's profound what can happen all over the body, not just in the mind with neurophotonic therapy. Now again, this last slide is just again showing where medicine generally views the human body, even natural medicine often, is that it's a very mechanistic viewpoint of the human body. See all the gears and the things in there, and if something malfunctions, we can just either cut it out, replace it with another gear. Or if you're deficient in something, we can just give you that something and fix it. But what we're striving to do here, and it's just a striving, we cannot fix everything yet. Sure wish we could. because that's a lot more fun, right? If you win all the time. But what we're striving to do is to get you back to the place where you were generally as a child. You didn't have to take something constantly in order to feel good. Even a natural thing, if you're having to take it every single day, year after year in order to feel good, then it's not fixing anything. Now, as a businessman, that would be great. I'd have a lifetime user of natural supplements. You'd always have to call me up and buy some more products. But I'd much rather, and I know our doctors would much rather, get you back to that pristine place where you don't have to take something every day just to feel good. And that takes time. That takes processing through. It's like a friend of mine used to say, it's like a ship on the ocean, the cruise ship, and to change directions after it's really gained steam, and it's kind of like having to change the direction of your life after 40, 50 years.